last session. Next week we have case studies, right? No, next week your presentations. Wow. Put your hand up if you are ready for the presentation.
I don't
next
mind.
week.
You want to do
Hands up for those ready.
You can't see
No.
Tomorrow's holiday. Oh, tomorrow's holiday? Yeah.
Next
That's why I should see
week
the
there are presentations. So then the question is, are
I
you
don't know
ready?
my public holidays.
That's okay, you'll be ready on the day. You're never ready. That's life. Alright? If you're ready, that means you have over prepared. Right? But you still need to rehearse. So do take time to rehearse. That is the best use of this weekend coming. Rehearse your presentation. And the only reason why you want to rehearse is so you can do it on time. The difference that rehearsal makes is it allows you to go that.
I don't know. Do we have to start with that? We can watch one of his examples.
That time management is so much easier just from rehearsal. Even though you say the same things, you practically go through it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times.
Oh, it's
The
in
rehearsal
PowerPoint.
you can squeeze. You can squeeze 10, 15% of the time off. And it looks much more prepared and neat, and then it closes up and bang. You have a 10 times better impression. No matter what your case study is, no matter what your PowerPoint slides are. Okay, so this is very interesting because for weeks now you've been asking for me to provide you with a white background, am I right? This white background. Okay, there's your white background, and so I want to deliver. There are some learning objectives, and I really want to focus on the first 6 of those learning objectives. That's what's relevant for the exam. In other words, we're going from 20.1 all the way up until 20.6. Are we clear on that? Okay. So this is examinable. The questions that you'll cover in the tutorial following next week will come out of the back of here. There's some reference to questions out of chapter 20 here. And it's very computational, and I think you'll have a great time. So, what is the overall theme of chapter 20? I think the overall theme is in the following. Let me just show you. See if this works. It's about just-in-time assembly. Now, some of you may have seen this before. Bear with me. Let's see if this works. Just-in-time assembly.
Maybe.
Pay attention to the different systems that are used in manufacturing a plane. Everything you see here is just in time. Just in time is about having no inventory at all. It's about having things at the right time. And it's about saving money because you get things that are delivered on time, you're not carrying any inventory at all. But you have to have perfect synchronization for just in time to work. There you have standard costing. Notice the pace of the line. How fast are the planes moving? If it's 2 inches a minute, how many feet an hour. That's 5 foot 1 hour, okay? So then they know at any point in time whether planes are ahead of schedule or not. That's standard costing. They're the times where the plane should be at any time in the day. Whether if they're ahead or behind, they know exactly. They don't need an accountant to say, oh, there's a negative variance here. It requires, just-in-time requires a lot of coordination. So the human resources is critical for just-in-time synchronization. Okay, the team members, everything. It's not just the physical things you see. All the people need to be synchronized. They have to have the one mind about what is required at every point in time. These are all systems. It looks like an old computer, but these are the just-in-time systems. Okay? So it takes, for the plane to go through, to make each plane, it takes 9 days. Okay? But because they are producing, all the planes are next to each other, they can make 20 or 30 planes a month. Okay? So they can squeeze them out very, very fast. All right, so what can you learn from that? Number one, what's really interesting about that video is that they're actually showing you that standard costing. At 6:30, the plane should be here. At 7:30, it should be here. That's each of those marks is how many feet in between. Each of those marks is 5 feet. Remember, how fast is the plane moving? 2 inches per minute, all right? What's that? Right? 2 inches per minute, 60 minutes. Okay, so that's 120 inches, that's 5 feet, 10 feet. Okay, 10 feet every hour. Okay, every half hour, 5 feet. And so you notice, if a plane at 7:30, they're at the 6:30 mark, they're an hour behind. You don't need a budget negative variance to tell the management where we're up to. You just got to go look where the planes are. Right? Now, what if one plane at the front is going slow? What about the plane at the back? What happens to that? Can that overtake it, like in the highway? In a 2-lane highway, can the other plane overtake it? Yes or no? Yes or no? No, it cannot, all right? So that's the challenge with just in time. You've got to make sure you've got to deal with the bottlenecks all the time. You've got to deal with bottlenecks all the time when you go just in time. Because as soon as you have a hold up, it holds up everything. Okay? And you cannot sort of take it like on a freeway. Now, here are I want to show you 2 big things that is part of the theme of just in time that comes out in chapter 20. There are 2 big trade-offs that you need to be aware of. And the first I'm going to show you, which is part of learning objectives 1, 2, and 3, is all about this notion of ordering costs. Now remember that little squiggly line here with the dot, you know what that means, don't you? You know what that means? Have you studied shorthand? That means ing, shorthand. That's the only shorthand I know. Okay? ing, ordering, right? Ordering costs, don't worry, you do not have to use that in the exam. Okay? Just makes it faster for me. All right, ordering costs, and what are we, and these are holding costs here. Inventory costs, holding costs. Right? So we're balancing off these two costs in the basic EOQ model. That's what is covered in the first 3 learning objectives in the chapter. But what happens when we go to the next learning objectives of just in time, we don't care about ordering costs so much. Now we focus on 2 other different costs. So when we get to that, I'm going to fill in the details. So I want you to start thinking about what would go here, what are the trade-offs here. So let's go into the first part before we go to just in time. Okay, we have our background, it's white. The students protested, they demanded that we have white background on PowerPoint, and you get what you asked for. So appreciate your feedback. Next year, I'll make sure that all of the slides have white backgrounds. This is a start. Okay, so let's go to the first part of what do we talk about with inventory management and retail organisations. I think here, these costs are so interesting here. These costs are so interesting here. And by the way, when I say holding costs, the chapter talks about the notion of carrying costs. Okay, so that's probably the same thing. All right. So what I'm going to do now for the next couple of minutes is just take you through these different types of costs that you need to be aware of. Okay. Purchasing costs are costs of goods, if you've got the slides in front of you, acquired from suppliers, including incoming freight costs. Usually is the largest category of goods in inventory. Okay? It's the actual purchase of raw materials. It's amazing the amount of raw materials I see in these factories that I visit, and I ask them, how many weeks of supply have you got here? And they say, oh, we've got about 6 or 7 weeks of materials here. I said, why do you need so much? I said, well, I was a bit uncertain about when we'll get the next batch in. I said, you need to cut that down to 2 weeks. All right? You're wasting so much money in carrying costs. Now, you've heard me talk about cutting inventory, right? And you heard me talk about, oh, it's going to save you 25%, right? Okay, now chapter 20 talks about that. Chapter 20 talks about that and uses the word called opportunity costs. So that's what chapter 20. When you heard me, put your hand up. You heard me talk about that the last 4 weeks. In carrying inventory, what is the value of the inventory multiplied by 25%? That's the cost of holding it for 12 months. Put your hand up if you heard me say that. Only some of you. What? The others weren't listening. Some of you, but most of you. All right. So now chapter 20. Chapter 20 is talking about the same thing. They call it opportunity costs. Okay. So it's the same idea, same concept. Let's have a look what we're talking. Now let's move to ordering costs. The costs of preparing and issuing purchase orders, receiving and inspecting items. Inspection. You know that. That's the start of your quality control, right? Okay. Inspection. Inspection is very important. Now, inspecting is you want to avoid inspection costs. You want prevention costs are more important to invest in, okay? And then of course, you've got inspection, and then you've got internal failure and external failure. But here, now they're talking about part of ordering, you need to inspect receiving goods inventory. So what companies are doing One way of doing it is you do the inspection when the goods are received, but what some companies do is they send engineers to the supplier to check the materials before they are even shipped. Because then, if there's any problem, they fix it at the supplier's factory. Okay? But those that don't have that investment of personnel to send a supplier, you still need to check it when you receive. Okay? And that's where you check what physically received matches with the invoices. I've got videos, I won't show you, I've got videos where actually I've gone into the room where they actually show you all the documents they use to actually check receiving materials inspection. So that, yes, there are factories that do this, a lot of factories do not do this. That's ordering costs, cost of preparing, issuing purchase orders. If you have to order 20 times a month, ordering costs are going to be very high. If you only have to order once a month, ordering costs can be quite low, right? Because you minimize the batches. Each batch, you can actually do the inspection once if you only order once a month, because the truck comes, it rolls up, it's only one, it rolls up once, you go in and do the inspection. It may take a little bit longer, but that whole allocation of personnel to the inspection is efficient because it's done only once. But if you order 20 times, you have 20 deliveries, now the inspector's got to drop what they're doing, you've got to do it 20 times. You know what it's like when you're switching between tasks at a time. You're not as efficient, okay? So in order to minimize ordering costs, you want to try and order less. Okay, love it. Carrying costs. This is my baby here. Carrying costs. That's inventory costs. Costs that arise while goods are held in inventory. These are the costs include, wow, there's that word, opportunity costs. Underline that. Opportunity costs of the investment tied up in inventory and costs associated with storage. Excuse me. I have been recovering, but I'm nearly there. Okay, ordering. Okay, so we've got carrying costs, opportunity costs, plus costs associated with storage. In other words, if you need to store 5 or 6 weeks inventory, maybe you need a room that's double the size if you only need to store 1 week's inventory. When I go to HTC, you all know HTC in Taiwan. Okay, they do it nearly just in time, but because they're in millions of units, they were making, at their height of their production back in 2011, 2012, they were doing 30 million phones a year. Okay, so what? That's 3 million a month. Okay, so that's, what's that? 100,000 a day. They made 100,000 phones a day, right? Wow. So therefore, and each phone has about 180 components. So you can imagine the inventory. All right. So if you have 1 day's of inventory at HTC, okay, you've got to have 100,000 of every one of those components in inventory. Right. So they told us in order to manage such high volumes, they normally have a minimum of 4 or 5 days inventory at the factory. They don't make any less. So they do have a buffer, a little buffer, so they don't have stock out. Instead of just in time, it needs to keep going. Okay. Automotive factories, they have less days inventory. They're just in time. It's much more automated. So let's keep moving here. Right, carrying costs, stock out costs are the costs that arise when a company runs out of a particular item for which there is a customer demand. Stock out. Guess what? Do you think that stock out will occur more likely when you have a just-in-time system or when you have the traditional system where you have lots of inventory and you just pick up the inventory when you need to make the hands up for just-in-time? Hands up, Dylan? Yeah, more likely just-in-time. So now we can put stock out here, right? Stock out. Right, so here's the missing one. I want you to think about what goes here. Okay. What goes here? Because this is the key. Chapter 20, the early part, talks about this trade-off here. That's what I'm going to introduce to you, the EOQ model. Okay? But the second part of chapter 20 goes on to just in time and talks about this balance here. Okay. So you probably ask, why doesn't chapter 20 do just like this? Well, talk to you. Okay, so stock out costs are the costs that arise when a company runs out of stock, right? So that's when we run out. All right. Now, what about costs of quality? You've seen this before, haven't you? And you're all very good because of prevention, appraisal, internal, external. Prevention is the key. You want to focus as much as possible on investment on prevention. And prevention is about having good design. Prevention is about having all the systems in place so you don't have problems with receiving inspection. You don't have problems with the delivery of materials that are faulty. Medical materials inspection. Better design and all health inspection. Finally, shrinkage. Actually, if you ask me, did any of you study the JS supermarket? Jaya, you know Jaya? Hello? Yeah, Jaya, right? Well, did any of you do that for your project? No one? Why not? Wouldn't that be interesting? It's right in the middle, but you all avoided it. What? Too big? Interesting. Interesting for those big retail establishments like supermarkets and all those big stores in the Sunway Mall, their biggest costs, one of their biggest costs is shrinkage. Shrinkage. Now, shrinkage is a nice way of saying where you lose it as a result of theft, embezzlement, misclassifications or misplacement. But theft and embezzlement, that is a big problem in retail industries. Theft, not just by customers, but by employees. Staff that work for you are pinching the stock. Yes! Just down the road, it's happening every day. It happens, all right? And this is a big issue. You go on, you Google how big shrinkage costs are. It's one of the biggest costs out of all of those 6 costs, especially in those industries where there are a lot of SKUs. SKUs means stock keeping units. Okay? So in industries where there are lots of SKUs, SKUs, that's stock keeping units. Okay. Right? Shrinkage is a huge problem. Huge. It just happens. It's just a percentage, right? So if you can Google it, you study the industries, you'll find, and you can Google and find out, okay, what is the percentage of shrinkage in particular industries? You can find out in Google now. Right? So the computer in front of you, maybe you can find it out now in the supermarket business. Shrinkage doesn't hurt. Please underline that. That's a very important cost. Okay, so here's the big decision, economic order quantity decision model. So the big question is here, how much, now that we have those 6 costs, how much should a firm order of a given product? The economic order quantity, it's a decision model. We want to get the perfect order. If we order too much of little orders each time, then our carrying costs go down and our ordering costs go up. If we order too irregularly, then our carrying costs go up and our order costs go down. See, that's the trade-off. See, look, there it is here, right? Order carrying. Okay, it's a basic trade-off that the EOQ model tries to calculate for you. Right? So we've got very basic, remember there's always assumptions with these models that demand costs, carrying costs are known, purchasing costs are unaffected by quantity. That means you purchase a lot, you're still paying the same, supply doesn't give you a discount compared to if you purchased a little. No stockouts occur, and management considers costs of quality and shrinkage costs only to the extent they affect ordering or carrying costs. So these are the different assumptions. So let's have a look at the model. Probably thinking, wow, formula. All right, 2 times D stands for demand in units for a specified period. So maybe demand for 1 year. 1 year is a normal period that they use. Size, Q is the size of each order. P is the relevant ordering costs. And C is the relevant carrying costs of 1 unit in stock for the time period used. So let's have a look at the calculation. Did you all, if you go to the textbook, and this is the first calculation that's shown on page 801 of your textbook. So what I did, I took a photo of the bottom of page 801 and then pasted it here. So now you know where you are in the textbook in chapter 20. And so what chapter 20 does, we could go through this example here where they have a special cost. A carrying cost is basically, remember we've got to have carrying costs, we've got ordering costs. The carrying cost is basically $5.20 per unit. And so the total demand of sunglasses per year is how much? $13,000 per year, and then we've got the price is $200 per order. So what we do is 2 times the total demand times the order price divided by the carrying costs, and then we take the square root of that, and that gives us 1,000 units. So basically, what this calculation is telling us is that if we have demand of 13,000, given that these are the carrying costs here, just a side note, notice that return on investment is 0.15. Okay? Remember I kept on saying 25%? Chapter 20 is making a liar of No. All right, 25% when you include, maybe you include this required return on investment plus other costs of insurance, materials handling, breakage. So on average, it can be much more than 15%. Okay, so don't feel that it's 15%, not 25%. Okay? In total, 1,000 units. So therefore, how many orders per year do we have? 13, right? 13,000 divided by 1,000 orders. So that's our first example. And we can illustrate that in terms of a graph. So the blue line represents the carrying costs. Notice that the carrying costs are exactly linear with respect to how much stock you have on hand. The ordering costs, that is the other side of this graph, is going down, right? So if you make 1 order per year, okay, then it can be very, very low, but you're going to carry those 13,000 units for more than half the year. So the carrying costs are very, very high. So, and then this line at the top is your break even. This line at the top is the total of the blue line and this greeny yellow type line here. Okay, so that's the first part, when the order assumes certainty of demand and time. Now, what we want to do now is start to think in terms of the reorder point. all right, if we had this perfect world, maybe there is a reorder point that we need to follow. What is the reorder point? It's the point at which we want to take into account how long it takes, lead time. So when you actually talk to suppliers, one of the very important things you need to do is to ask, you don't just go there, what is your FOB price, and you compare one supplier with another. No. You've got to talk about non-price things. You want to talk about, so which, how long will it take for you to bring me FOB, that is to the port, all right, a shipment of 5,000 units. And so one supplier may say, well, you've got to give us 5 weeks. Another supplier will say, we can do it in 2 weeks. I not believe them, and you start to look at differences between suppliers in terms of the lead time. And maybe the one that takes 5 weeks can give you a cheaper price. The one that takes 2 weeks may be more expensive, you see? So you're starting to trade off more than one factor. Price is never the only factor you use in negotiations. So purchase order lead time is a very important factor when you are comparing suppliers. So now we can do a calculation. We can illustrate that if the lead time has to be 2 weeks, then we need to order before the stock goes down to 0. We need to order here, because by the time it gets to 0, the truck from the supplier is coming. And the truck comes in on the day it gets to 0. That's the idea of the lead time of 2 weeks. In the next scenario, we want to think about when the demand and lead time is uncertain. What do we mean by uncertain? Just a minute, what do we mean by uncertainty? I'll let you just digest this page for a minute. Remember, we want to be nice to have some safety stock. In some ways, HTC had safety stock because they had a warehouse, small warehouse adjacent to their manufacturing facility in Taiwan. Okay? It's an inventory held at all times regardless of the quantity of inventory ordered using the EOQ model. Of course, it's replenished. It's a buffer against unexpected increases in demand, uncertainty about lead time, and unavailability of stock. Managers use a frequency distribution based on prior daily or weekly levels of demand to compute safety stock levels. So, if you ask, that's the key word I want to impress upon you is this. Managers use a frequency distribution based on prior daily or weekly levels of demand to compute safety stock levels. Now, let me tell you a story of an interview I had with the Chief Operating Officer of HTC many years ago. I said, what is your biggest challenge? What is your biggest challenge? Like, just, you asked that in your project, am I right? Did you ask that? What an interesting, did you get interesting answers? No? Put your hand up if you got interesting answers. Put your hand up if you got answers that, wow, I didn't expect that one. Hands up, yes or no? What, you already know the business you're talking to? Think you know more than the owner? I'm sure you're surprised. Okay? So I asked the COO, so what is your biggest challenge? Like, you're doing 30 million phones a year. You were the leading Android. You were the premier Android phone manufacturer starting in 2009, 2010. You were out before Samsung because you had the shortest product lead time product development cycle time from inception of the product to delivery to the market of 7 months. 7 months! And that was back in 2009. That's why Google went to HTC first and not to Samsung to pilot the new Android operating system. Do you know the Android operating system? Many of you are using it now. Wow. Okay. So HTC was the first. Okay, so here's HTC. They're the first. They're the first to try out Qualcomm's new Snapdragon chipset. Qualcomm now is in most of your phones that you have now. Qualcomm makes the little CPU operating system that is in your phone that you're playing with now. Okay? But Qualcomm went to HTC first. Why? Because HTC can bring that concept to market in 7 months. Boom. Because Qualcomm wanted to show the world that, hey, we're in smartphones now. Wow. So there's these things going on with new product development. You know, 7-month lead time. They got 30 million units per year. Okay, they're at the cutting edge. They are far in advance in technology than Apple is, and they have been for many years. Does that mean that they are better at marketing? No, they don't have as much marketing muscle as Samsung. Anyway, here's my big question to you. What do you think the biggest challenge for the COO was? And the hint is in your slide. Here's the question. I asked the CEO, what is your biggest challenge? Is it suppliers giving you faulty materials? Is it not being able to have supply? Is it not being able to make the phones on time? Is it not being able to ramp up production? Is it not being able to bring the phone to market? You know, there was a whole list of things he could have said. But what did he tell me? What do you think he said? About what? Uncertainty of what? You're nearly there. Quick. Uncertainty of what? It's there in front of you in the slide. Uncertainty about what? Read the word. Where does uncertainty appear? Uncertainties about what? About what? What? Demand, yes! Right? Nothing to do about supply. There's nothing to do with the suppliers. There's nothing to do with the raw materials. There's nothing to do with quality. There's nothing to do with inspection. His biggest challenge, he said to me, was getting the market demand, the market forecast right. Because he told me, if I can get the market forecast right, the demand right, I can run the whole supply chain like clockwork. Wow. Isn't that amazing? Like, the textbook's right. Okay? So underline, please, underline that. You want me to underline it for you, okay? The lecturer does this for you too, okay? So I think this works. It's, I had trouble last week working this, didn't I? But I may have fixed it. Let's have a look. Anyway, uncertainty about demand. Not working. I'll have to fix it next time. Okay, uncertainty about demand. So underline that. That is so clear. If we can get the demand, if we know what the certainty is, then we can manage everything like clockwork. Because in a just-in-time, especially, we are pulling production through the system. The demand is pulling. Now, I'll give you a true story. Back in November, they're all true stories, I tell you. Back in November 2011, HTC went to the market with a new Evo phone. Do you know what the Evo phone is? Well, it was a big phone at that time. Anyway, they had millions more demand than what they planned. Millions more. And they had stock out. Stock out. They don't want to have stock out. But it happened. So what did HTC do? The stock out occurred because they only had one chipset, one screen supplier, Samsung. Samsung was the main supplier of screens for their phone. So what they do, HTC went to Sony immediately. Sony, can you fill in? We've got a bottleneck here on the screens. Samsung, we only promised to supply so many millions of screens. We need more millions. Can you supply? What do you think Sony said? Do you know Sony? You know Sony? What did they say? Sony said, sure, of course. And then Sony supplied millions of screens to HTC to help them get past this stock out. Okay. So why did that occur? What was the problem? Number one, they under-forecast the demand for this new phone. The demand was so many more millions than what they expected. And because they under-forecast, when they went to Samsung to supply, the Samsung supplying the screen, they only contracted for so many million, right? For what the forecasts say they would need. But because the demand was much higher, and when they went back to Samsung said, oh, sorry, but we've already dedicated all our capacity to you, we don't have extra. Because you didn't ask for more. So that's why they had to go to Sony, the second supplier, to actually fill up that bottleneck. True story, and that was reported in newspaper too, not just from my interviews. Very interesting. Okay, so let's have a look at what it may look like so we've got chapter 20, page 804. All right, so what it may look like is as following. Computation safety stock for the shade. Now remember, we're talking about 13,000 units ordered per year, right? 13,000 in sales. And basically, what you are given in page 804 is a probability of stock out. That is, there's a probability that you may have a certain order. There's a probability of 20%, 9%, 6%, 9, 6, 6. All right? So those probabilities are given in chapter 20. I think I've mentioned it here. Let me have a look. Okay. And then what happens is the probability of stock out, and how do they work out the stock out in units? It's basically the demand. So they've got a probability of demand. So it's 20%, we're going to have a demand of 600. 9% chance we'll have a demand of 700. There's a 6% chance we'll have a demand of 800. 9% 7, 6% 8 again, all right? So you can see that again. So if we have no safety stock, then the actual cost or the probability, that is the probability multiplied by the stock out, all right, multiplied by the value of the unit is 20% minus the demand is 600, the stock out, because you only have safety stock of 500, then the stock out is the demand minus how much stock you have on average, and so the stock out is 100. If the demand is 700, you're 200 above what you average carrying. If it's 800, you're 300 above what you carry on average. And so this stock out, we actually multiply it by the probability, and then there are the relevant stock out costs and the number of orders per year, and then we do the calculation. So if we have zero safety stock, then the total stock out cost is 2912. But if we have lots of safety stock, we can actually bring our stock out cost down to zero. But the question you need to ask is, yes, it's nice to have stock out cost down to zero here, but what's important is to trade off the ordering cost versus the carrying costs. And so here, the relevant carrying costs, because you're carrying nothing, it's zero, but the stock out cost is 2912. Here, you're carrying 100 in inventory, and so the relevant carrying cost is 520, and the stock out cost is 1092, the total is 1612. Here, you're carrying lots of safety stock, so therefore the carrying cost is much higher, the stock out cost is zero, and the total is 1560. So which one would you go with? The 2912, you go with the 1612, the 1352, or 1560. So which level of safety stock, given its probabilities, should you carry? Hands up for 0. Hands up for 100. Hands up for 200. Hands up for 300. Okay, so 200 has it because 200 is optimizing on the total cost. You notice 29, 16, 13, 15. So 200, you're only paying that amount. Given everything else being equal based on all the assumptions that are given in the question. Okay, so that's dealing with uncertainty. We're going to have a break in a minute. Let's notice I have put learning objective 3. Can you all see that? And then you see it says page 805, so you know exactly where it is in your edition of Wandering. Estimating inventory-related relevant costs and their effects. So the relevant costs are categorised as following: carrying costs, stock out costs, and ordering. Notice here are the carrying, stock out, and ordering. Isn't that interesting, right? So we're up to the stage now where we've introduced these 3 types of costs. Okay? The EOQ model is basically just trading off ordering versus carrying. But what we just showed you then, what we just introduced was this uncertainty. If we have a probability of demand, there may be a probability that we have stock out. So now we need to take into account 1, 2, and 3. And that was that last example that we went through. And so do you know what this part is here yet? You haven't figured it out? You figured it out, have you? Okay, I'll leave that for you to figure out. Right, so now the carrying costs, relevant inventory carrying costs consist of incremental costs and the relevant opportunity costs of capital. And O'Connor always says it's 25%. The textbook's saying 15%, but also that there are other costs associated with these here. So, and the relevant mental costs, okay. So relevant opportunity costs of capital, they're just specifying what this means again. And that is the return of foregone by investing capital in inventory rather than elsewhere. So you can invest it in property, which a lot of Chinese business owners want to do. I talked to one Chinese owner and I talked to them about, because they wanted to, the jackpot is becoming a approved supplier for Apple. So they'll do anything to become an approved supplier for a major international brand name. So why would they do that? Even at a loss. They don't care about, they're not making any money. So I talked to the owner, I said, you're not making any money, why do you become approved supplier? I said, if we become approved supplier, then we can market ourselves to our other customers to say, we are an approved supplier for Apple, or HP. And then we use that in our marketing to other customers. And then I talked to my friend at Apple. He's currently in Shanghai working with Apple at the moment. And he was telling me that, yeah, we have a lot of suppliers that try to become approved for us, but for most of them, their deep down interest is to become approved, use that for marketing, make some money, all right, get the profits on the board, do the IPO, sell the IPO, and then just put the money into property. At the end of the day, he told me that most of these factory owners are not really interested in making the best product in the world. They're just interested in, it's a means to an end to get property, to buy property. Okay? And that's just at the heart of Chinese culture, that property is stable and property is a home and property is a good investment, and I don't disagree with that. But for a lot of factory owners, that's their mentality. They're not interested in making the best product in the world, which is what Apple and all the major brand names are looking for in their suppliers. All right, enough about my stories. Let's just keep moving here. There is a cost of prediction error. That's the next idea. So what we're going to do now, it's 2:57, so let's have a break for 10 minutes. And after the 10 minutes, we come back and then we'll go into just in time and we will reveal this secret word here, okay? So 10-minute break, I'll see you shortly. Thank you. Monday, 9:30, we have 2-bit prediction error. And again, this is applying the EOQ model. And what we're interested in is the monetary outcome of what we predict the sales would be compared to the monetary outcome of what it turned out to be. So exactly like what happened with HTC when they got the prediction wrong. So the prediction, originally the EOQ was 13,000. I just want to bring your attention to page 805 of the textbook, where they do a calculation and actually do a comparison on page 805 that, maybe if it's not 13,000, maybe you predict it to be 12,000 or to be 14,000, and then you do the calculation of EOQ. So here's the idea, all right? In hindsight, it turns out the demand is 13,000, and if that was the case, then you would have 1,000 units because that's the EOQ amount, right? Okay, good. It's possible that you can err by thinking that the sales will be much higher, or you can have an error by thinking that the sales will be much lower. So maybe if it's 15,000, or here it's only 11,000. So the cost of prediction error is really what you're going to, if you predicted 15,000, then your average carrying is going to be much more. You know, you're going to be carrying something like 1,250. If you only predict only 11,000, then of course you're going to be carrying something like 900, but you're going to have stock out costs. See what I mean? So your carrying costs are going to be low down, but stock out costs are going to go up. Here, you're going to have more than what you really need. You're going to have much more carrying costs, but your stock out costs are going to be zero. Why? Because you always have much more than what you need, right? So that's the idea of trying to figure out what the cost of the prediction error is. Okay? And so basically, 1, 2, and 3. Number 1, you compute the monetary outcome from the best action that could be taken. All right. So that the monetary outcome is this is the best action here, and then you compare it with the best action based on incorrect predicted amount. So you actually compare it with, you incorrectly predicted here, so you compare it with this cost here. Or if you predict it here, then you compare it with the cost result here. And that's basically what step 1, 2, and 3 is doing. Okay? So have a look at page 805 for that actual calculation. Conflicts between the EOQ decision model and manager's performance evaluation. Okay, now I want you to think humanistically about this now. So far, we have talked about the EOQ. Then we have introduced some uncertainty. And we introduce some, maybe we may get the prediction wrong, okay? And I told you about HTC, you know, their biggest worry is getting the forecasting correct, okay? Their biggest challenge is getting the sales forecast correct. Because if you can do that, then everything is clockwork. Wow. Okay. So what we're doing now is thinking, no, oh, hang on. What about this is all fine and this is all fine, but what about the human? There's a human that works in the organisation. They're not just going to follow this like a robot. Okay? Because I want you to think that if you're in charge of manufacturing the production, then all you care about is making a good quality product. You care about making a good product, right? Am I right?
Point of view.
But what if you're in charge of purchasing? What do you care about? Do you care about making a good quality product? No. You care about securing a good supply at a good price and with me now, right? So managers in different divisions tend to have different incentives. That's what this is starting to talk about here. All right. So let's read this out. What happens if the order quantity based on the EOQ decision differs from the order quantity managers would choose to make their own performance look best? So maybe you procurement managers, that managers who are in charge of sourcing materials. All right, so normally they know the supply network and which suppliers to get from. One of their performance benchmarks is actually getting the materials at a good price. Now, everything else being equal, I mean, negotiation skills and everything, how could I possibly get a better price if I'm negotiating with you? I have two options. I'll give you two scenarios. Which one is likely to give you a better price? If I order from you, like sunglasses, I order from you just 6 times per year, and each time we're going to order 2,150. The other one is I order from you 13 times a year, and each time it's going to be 1,000. Which one is going to likely give me a stronger negotiation position for getting a better price? 6 times per year order, 13 times. Which one will give me more power as the purchaser? If I order more frequently or less frequently? Sorry, if I order big orders or frequent small orders? Hands up for the big orders. Yes, of course. Suppliers like big orders. I told you that factories want big orders. They want 250 seats of the same colour. If you're with me here, they hate the fact that you want 6 different colours. Right? Because that means they have to do 6 different matches. Right? Lots of costs. They hate that. Right? They like it if you can order 6 times a year, not 13 times a year. Right? So the managers, the purchasing managers' incentives, if everything else has been equal, they are inclined to want to not order so frequently. They are inclined to order less frequently, so therefore the manager's incentives may be will increase carrying costs and decrease carrying costs. Because they're ordering less frequently, because each time they can negotiate a better price, suppliers like big orders. Seriously, I talk to a lot of suppliers, and buyers tell me too. Suppliers hate it when you only want to order 1,000 units. Seriously? You've got to be kidding me! Go away! That's the response you get. All right? They want 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. More. Okay? And they said, no, I just want 500. And they said, well, we've got a good price for you. Of course, the price is going to be higher. Right? So as a procurement manager, you are incentivized to actually try and fewer orders and larger orders, because then that gives you a better negotiation power. But for the company, it actually increases the carrying costs. It increases the holding costs. And that's what we mean when we say there can be a conflict between the EOQ decision here, and the order quantity managers would choose to make their own performance look best. Okay? And that's what they're explaining. Managers are interested in making their own performance look better will only focus on measures used to evaluate their performance. Conflicts will then arise between the EOQ model's optimal order quantity and the order quantity that managers regard as optimal. Okay? So keep in mind, all right, another story. How many of you have heard of there's a major component manufacturer, electronics component manufacturer. What they do every year is they bring in a team from Accenture. You know Accenture? Okay, Accenture is a major consulting firm, you know, spin-off from other big fours. Anyway, they bring in Accenture in every year to get the production manager, the engineering manager, the purchasing manager, and the sales manager, all of them in the one table, and Accenture comes in, and their job is to get them all on the one page before they go and start talking to suppliers. That's how bad it is in organisations where you've got these individual silos of functions where the managers, they have different concepts of what they want. Engineers, they want the perfect product. Production managers, they want a quality product. Sales managers, they want a new product with new features last week. It's always too late. And procurement, they want cheaper inputs, they want, and high volume. They all have different ideas about what they want. They're all incentivized differently. And it was so funny when I heard this story that Accenture comes in not to help negotiate with the suppliers, but to actually get all of these different managers to agree together before the company goes and talks to the suppliers. Wow. Is it really that bad? Yes, it is in some organisations. And I went, how many of you know Shanghai Lucent Alcatel Bell? So I interviewed them for a project going back many years ago. So I went to the Lucent headquarters. Lucent used out of Canadian organisation, listed company, but they joint ventured with Shanghai, and they're creating telephone networks and all the wires and everything like that. And so they're in Shanghai. So I went there, and the manager I went to meet, he said, "Oh, you're very lucky we can get a meeting room because for the next 2 weeks, it's supplier meeting period." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, we've got 2,000 suppliers, and all of those suppliers have to come into our headquarters for these 2 weeks for negotiations." Wow, this is big stuff. Like the textbook doesn't talk about this enormity of supplier management. And so this whole idea of managers' performance evaluation, yes, it is a big deal. It is a real deal. If a company has to hire and pay big money to a consulting firm to come in to get these managers to behave, just behave, all right? Do the right thing by the company. Don't just think of your own self-interest. Wow, amazing. All right, so that brings us to my favourite, and that is just-in-time purchasing. And learning objective 4, describe why companies are using just-in-time purchasing. Page 807, okay? So page 807 of your textbook. So let me read this out with you, and you can underline keywords. Just-in-time purchasing is the purchase of materials or goods so that they are delivered just as needed for the production or sales. And so here you want to make a note afterwards. Therefore, sales forecasting is critical, all right? Make a note. Therefore, sales forecasts are critical. And I've already made a note earlier, right? Getting that forecast right is so critical, right? I'll repeat that again. Next section. Just-in-time purchasing is not guided solely by the EOQ model because that model only emphasizes the trade-off between relevant carrying and ordering costs. In other words, EOQ is trading off ordering versus carrying. Under just-in-time, what we are doing is pushing ordering costs down to 0. Okay. Now, what is the missing word here? Have you figured that out yet? Not yet? You still figuring that out? Let's have a look. There it is. It's carrying costs. What we're trying to do now, we're not, EOQ is about trading off ordering versus holding, all right? We did that calculation. You'll do the optimized calculations. You need to know that for the exam. But now when we go just-in-time, we forget about ordering costs because in a just-in-time world, we are focusing on having minimum inventory. And so the idea is to try and reduce our carrying costs, but we want to avoid stock out, okay? We want to get this to a minimum and avoid stock out. That is what we're trying to do with just-in-time. And I think this is a key picture that should be in the textbook, but it's not in the textbook. I think this summarizes the difference very, very nicely. Okay, so let's explain. Just-in-time reduces the cost of placing a purchase order because long-term purchasing agreements define price and quality terms. Individual purchase orders covered by these agreements require no additional negotiation regarding price or quantity. So I'm working with data from HDC at the moment on a project, and we actually got real data from them for 15 components. Do you know how many suppliers were supplying 15 components of this data? There were 78 suppliers. Like on average, what's that? It's more than 5 suppliers per component. Like, wow, amazing. All right, companies have long-term purchasing agreements with these suppliers. Did you know, and I look at the data, I can show you the data on Thursday. I look at the data, actually I will present this to you on Thursday. I just want to show you some real live data. The data are in the hundreds of millions. It's amazing the orders that they are pushing through on these suppliers. Like it's not just 1,000 here, 10,000 here, right? This is sufficient order quantity of 13,000, 1,000. No, when we go into component supplier management, we're talking about hundreds of millions more. Wow. And then you multiply that by the number of orders during the year. They normally order at least once a month from these suppliers. And they have an agreement that we will order on average per month. What they do is they normally have a 6-month agreement. Like here, a long-term purchasing agreement in the smartphone industry is 6 months. 6 months is a long term. Hello? All right? Like for every one of you, 3 months is a long term, right? Like 3 months start to the exam, am I right? That's all you're thinking of, all right? That's long term. In the smartphone industry, it's only 6 months. In those 6 months, what they do is they promise the supplier, in the next 6 months, we're going to order from you, say, 6 million units of components. Or 20 million, right? And then in month 1, they call off. They call off 900,000 in month 2. Oh, we need a little bit more. We'll call off 1 million. Oh, next month we'll call off 1 million. But the supplier is guaranteed to HTC that on average, over those 6 months, that HTC will demand 6 million units. Correct? But any month could be 10% higher or lower. That's normally how they do the agreements. So in other words, the manufacturers are pushing that uncertainty onto the suppliers in the short term. And that's how you can actually reduce the cost of placing a purchase order. Right? So they do it in long-term contracts. So the suppliers are guaranteed that they'll get their order over 6 months, but every month may be a little bit different. Companies are using electronic links to place purchase orders at a small fraction of traditional methods, like phone or mail. And so Eugene, my colleague, is teaching information systems, data analytics. He talks about ERP systems. Okay? He talks about electronic data interchange systems, EDI, which actually do automatic orders to the suppliers when a certain reorder point is triggered. That happens. Companies are using purchase order cards similar to consumer credit cards. So this is how they can reduce the cost of purchasing. So what are the relevant costs of just-in-time purchasing? Okay, so the relevant costs, okay. Time for a quiz, right? What were the 6 costs? What were the 6 inventory carrying costs? What were the 6 big costs at the beginning of the chapter 20? What were the 6 costs? And are these the 6 costs here? Are they different or are they the same? Which one of these is not different from the others? Which one? Which one? 1 out of these 6 is different from the list of 6 in slide 1 or 2. Which one? My favourite, opportunity costs. That's awesome. Love it. All right. So what you notice in your third PowerPoint slide, it said here are the 6 costs of current inventory. What was here was instead of opportunity costs, they had shrinkage costs. Is that right? Shrinkage. So now with just in time, we don't have shrinkage here. We have opportunity costs. That's what's relevant just in time. Remember, because you're not trying to carry inventory at all. Okay, just in time is all about, really, it's the big cost of just in time is that you cannot meet a demand that is out of your forecast, like what happened with HTC. And then they went to Sony to make up the shortfall. All right. So now we are in page 808. Page 808. Is that right? Of your textbook. For those who have the textbook, it's page 808, chapter 20. Notice exhibit 20.4. Sensitivity of EOQ supports movement towards just in time. What do we mean by sensitivity supports moving towards just in time? Well, let's have a look at that sunglass example again. Remember, there was 13,000 sunglasses. Am I right? 13,000 sunglasses. That is the planned demand each year. All right. So what is happening here? Let's have a look. There's 13,000, but the relevant ordering costs per purchase order, if we have only 200, 150, 100 down to 30, if the relevant carrying costs are 520, 7, 10, and 15. What we'll find over time that the actual total cost of ordering diminishes if we rank the carrying costs go up, but the actual purchasing is less here, so 228. What they're trying to say is that there's variations in the relevant ordering and carrying costs. In other words, sensitivity supports movement towards just in time. But we don't want to go to this edge of this table. We want to go closer to this edge over here. All right. So the whole idea is to try and reduce carrying costs, which is over here, but also minimise the probability that stock out will occur. So we don't care so much about ordering, because we can automate ordering. We're assuming that we can automate ordering. We're assuming that we have agreements with suppliers that once we contract with them over the long term, that we don't have to renegotiate every month. We don't have to renegotiate, okay? So we're trying to what we're trying to do is, by automation, we're trying to, with just in time, through automation, all right, EDI and all those, and through long-term contracts. We're trying to say, well, let's not worry about that. So what are we left with? All we're left with is this trade-off versus this trade-off, and that's why this comes down to here. And so really, see, carrying costs that matter in working out, okay, what is the optimal just-in-time calculation? Okay. Because of automation, because of long-term contracts with suppliers, we don't have to worry so much about ordering costs. Okay. At the end of the day, it's all about carrying costs versus stock-out costs. So let's have a look. Exhibit 20.5 calculation. I might be going too fast for myself here. All right, page 809. Okay, so we can look at the relevant cost per unit. Current purchasing policy is What we're doing now is we're comparing a traditional EOQ purchasing model with a just-in-time, what a just-in-time policy may look like. So let's have a look at the difference, and you can then underline the differences here. All right, so did this all print out okay on your PowerPoint slide? Okay, all right. Is this helpful? So you can see the exhibit in your PowerPoint? Okay, that's good. All right, so the purchasing costs, the relevant cost per unit is 14, quantity per year, 13,000, so there's the total costs. All right. Now, under just-in-time, it may be the same, but what's the difference? So what we're trying to do is the difference. There's not much difference in the ordering costs. There's not much difference in the opportunity carrying costs here. There's no difference here. Remember the 210 plus the 310 gave us $5.20. Here it's 210 plus $3, so just a little bit different here. Customer return cost, no different, right? But what we're trying to do, where are we saving the money? Let's have a look. It may cost, our purchasing costs may go up per unit. Our ordering costs, let's have a look here, go up because we're ordering more frequently, here less frequently. Here we're ordering 13 times per year. Here we're ordering 130 times a year. Wow, 10 times more for the just-in-time approach, right? 130 times per year. Wow, that's every 3 days. Wow, not once a month here. So you can see that the costs of ordering go from 26 to 260. But now the opportunity carrying cost goes from 1,050 down to 105. We've cut our inventory from 500 down to 50, you see? So and that's the biggest difference, right? See, 1,000 down to 105. And here, other carrying costs gone from 1,550 down to 150. So the big differences are in the carrying costs that we have witnessed. The only thing that you need to be careful about is the stock out costs. So look, let's just summarize this here, all right? I just want to show you the three different types of costs are still present, all right? That is the ordering. All right? These three things are still relevant, all right? But here's the big question for you in this exercise. Have a look. Which of these is the least relevant? That's the question. Have a look. Have a look. Where are we getting our savings from? Let's have a look. How much are we saving by changing our ordering? It's costing us how much? 26 to 260. How much does that cost us? 234. Is that right? Difference. Am I right? 234? Yes or no? All right. So this factor here, all right, is 234. Right? All right. So let's have a look. Next one. Carrying holding costs. Carrying costs here. Okay. So we've got it's gone from 2,600 to 255. So what's the difference? So what's the difference? 2,245. Is that right? Yes or no? Hello? So what do you use your smartphone if you can't calculate? 2,245, right? Huh? Right? So 2,245. Okay. So what about stock out costs? Stock out costs 0 to 600. What's the difference? 600. Okay. So the big point that the textbook is making is, look, here are the three things, but once we go into this just-in-time mentality, here are the big trade-offs. Like 2,245 versus 600, this 234 that you can, this becomes irrelevant. That's what it's saying, that these are the two trade-offs here, and that's why carrying costs here is really the big trade-off against stock-out costs. And it's not, we don't need to worry about ordering costs versus carrying because we have long-term contracting, we have automation, we don't need to worry about the benefits or the costs of ordering more frequently are not that prohibitive. What is prohibitive is this carrying cost. This is what we're saving. And we just need to manage the stock out costs. So that's the big trade-off here. It's not the trade-off between these two anymore. And that's the big shift from the first half of the textbook when we go to the second half of the textbook. Just-in-time purchasing, planning and control, and supply chain analysis. Really? They talk about supply chain, my favourite topic. Well, one of my favourites. Well, chapter 20 talks about it, so I better show you. Okay, so what's the big idea here? Supply chain describes. I want to finish up here. Go on across. I think we can do this on Thursday. So just to give you a prelude onto Thursday, supply chain describes the flow of goods and services from the initial sources to delivery. Supply chain members share information, plan, coordinate. And so it's all about fewer stockouts, reduced manufacturing, fewer manufacturing orders, and lower inventory. So actually, when we start to talk about supply chain analysis, basically it's the application of activity-based costing to different suppliers. Remember when you did activity-based costing last semester? I know it's a long time ago. Pushpa told me and Mason told me that they did teach you activity-based costing. Am I right? Nod your head if you're not sure. I know you were taught that. All right. So what was the big thing there? What was the big idea? The big idea of activity-based costing was to work out, what were the resources being consumed by the different products. Am I right? And the more more cost basis we could use to get a finer allocation to the different products, the more accurate we can give information on it, right? To decide, do we continue with one product or another product, or do we drop a product, okay? So that was the whole idea, right? Here, it's the same thing. All you have to do is replace products with suppliers. And the big question is if we look at the total cost that supplier A is costing us versus supplier B, C, D, and E, and I can tell you, all these big companies like Apple and HTC and Samsung, they have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 multiple suppliers for every component. Right. So therefore that's perfect for ABC, because now we can apply cost to the suppliers. Some suppliers may not like a 6-month contract. Some say, no, we don't do that. Or if they do, they may charge you more. And so therefore that supplier is costing more than another supplier. You see, you'll find ways in which, the ordering cost of one supplier is cheaper than another. Or one supplier gives you a discount, another one doesn't. Now suddenly the suppliers are different on multiple levels, and that's where we've got that ticket-based costing difference. And that's basically what this is trying to show you, that supply chain members share information, plan, coordinate activities. And so they're saying that when we go to the next stage, it starts to talk about, well, all the suppliers are different. They're all different. And then there's a calculation where we could actually compare one supplier versus another one. And that's what we're going to do on Thursday. We're going to start to look at a very simple activity-based costing analysis applied to comparing one supplier versus another. And this is real based on my own experience in actually working with suppliers. Okay? Not every supplier is the same. One may have good quality, another one good price. One has this, one has that. And it's very hard to compare on one dimension. You always have to compare on multiple dimensions. And that's why it's perfect for activity-based costing concepts, principles. And so that's where chapter 20 is going. Right? So on Thursday we'll cover that. So just want to summarize again today. What we started off today was this notion of the EOQ model. We just want to compare ordering costs with carrying costs. Okay? And it's all about what is that efficient and optimal order. And then we start to assume that, well, there's no uncertainty. But what if there is uncertainty? All right, then we need to do a normal distribution, and then we can start to calculate the carrying costs under the different scenarios, because stockouts will start to occur. And then we think about prediction models. What if we got the sales forecast wrong? What if we over-predict? What if we under-predict? What are the costs in the prediction wrong? And then we looked at the human factor. That is that procurement managers, they may want to order larger units than what the EOQ model says, because when they order larger volumes, they can go to a supplier and actually get a better price and better negotiation. And that makes their performance look better. Why? Because they get a cheaper price. So that was the first half, and then I've just briefly started to introduce you to this notion of just in time, and that's where if we can longer term contracts and automation, the ordering costs, it does not become a big deal anymore. What does become the big deal is the carrying costs and the stock out costs. Stock out becomes more frequent. Why? Because you're doing things just in time. So I want you to can you feel the theme that goes from a perfect world of EOQ, and then we say, oh, it's imperfect, and then we can make prediction errors, and then we've got the human factor. And then we go to the current world today, where you talk to a lot of the modern manufacturing, a lot of it is just in time. And then actually that creates more uncertainty in some ways. What is the uncertainty? We'll talk about on Thursday, but part of that uncertainty is it increases the cost of stock out. And so now we are trading off carrying costs versus stock out costs. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass around my notepad. If everyone in the lecture can write their name on it, so we know that everyone's here. This is I'm going to give the code to the students, but the rest of the students will write their name. And I'll get the code.
Close enough.
Just give me a few minutes.
Now, where did you get the provision for credit loss? Possible credit loss?
Singapore, she's so cute.
So how does it change?
Like things like that attract her too. Things like that attract you too.
Hunting off.
Sorry?
Following
I don't know, I was thinking of like sausage instead. That's why I said roasted. A bun. Next apple on a stick. Next mistake. Yes, you did.
throw away.
Hungry. Someone's hungry. I'm hungry. No, you ain't. I'm hungry. Adeline said she had something due today, so after today or something like that.
She said why she couldn't book the whole place for like 3 hours. She booked the place for 1 hour, then we had to go to the original place. And then we had that on Saturday and Friday. She finished marking everyone. What's this year's teacher? This is like his last year, his last one to see. Yeah, exactly. Or you give me an
Okay, the code
extension.
for today for international students. And thank you for.
Yeah. Why you haven't been recording?
Oh my gosh!
That's why I wanted to stop it. You don't.